Photographers. So I was asked recently by a subscriber to look into this subject around, can you really make it as a photographer without an agent? And I guess my answer to that in the short term is yes. A slightly longer answer would be, well, it depends what kind of photographer you want to be and what you're doing. And it's not just as easy as that. And also, once you have an agent, it's not just as easy as that. So to make a short story long, let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Lance Burkitt Waffles for 45 minutes while you listen encounter. Joe. So welcome back to another episode. We're into the 40s now. My God, how did we get here? I mean, a year ago I did this for a bit of release. Now it's turned into something a bit more substantial. So I'm going to have to start thinking about this a bit more. Anyway, thanks for dropping by. So a couple of weeks ago I did a little competition on shorts where I said, anybody wants to like, share, subscribe to the channel and all that, and suggest the topic for me to get into, I'll give you a little one of these mugs as a prize. And a young chap called Toby Shaw did that very thing, and I liked his idea, which was the question from Toby was, hi, by the way, Toby, thanks for your contribution. It was, can you make it as a photographer without an agent? And I thought that's an interesting question, because there's a bit of a fallacy, myth, misunderstanding as what an agent does and why an agent does it. And I know some of you probably look at photographers who have agents and think, oh, I want a bit of that. But it's, in my experience and in my conversations with agents and in me being turned down by millions of agents, became quite obvious that you don't necessarily need one. What you need is a different approach to your photographic practice. And what I mean by that is not that you need to be a different photographer, you don't need to change your style, you don't need to learn to copy people, you just need to have a different comprehension of what making it and how to get work as a photographer happens. That makes sense? So some people fall into the trap of doing lots of shoots, whether it's in one particular area. So you might just do portraits, you might do fashion, you might do landscapes, you might do products, and you're busy as hell for a year, 2 years, whatever it is. You build a portfolio and you think, that's good, I'm doing good here. And you start firing messages off to agencies trying to get a response. And I guess it's a little bit like this in many walks of life, not just in photography, but also in music, in other creative areas, where you think getting the manager or getting that person to point you in the right direction and show your work to stuff is going to be the thing that just suddenly springboards you to success. And that's not quite the case. And so what photographers are lacking, and I was guilty of this back in the day, you haven't got... Photographers are creatives. We make work. We have ideas. We see things. We photograph them. That's what we do. We don't necessarily, within that, have a acumen of Alan Sugar, for example. And that's not, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's something you have to learn. So most photographers won't come from a business background. I did come from a bit of a business background, but I never thought I had to apply that to photography. I thought just being a great photographer and putting out good work would be enough for some brilliant agent to go, we'll have him and we'll push him here. My naivety has allowed me to be able to talk about this to you guys and hopefully inspire you to do it slightly differently. In the end, I kind of decided I didn't want an agent. I realised that I need to do it myself and keep that 20% or whatever it is, but I'll talk about that later. So it's a bit of a myth. Let's start at the myth of an agent. That Joe Blogg's photographer gets a portfolio together, goes to the agent, and the agent goes, you're brilliant, so I'm going to push you here, push you there, push you everywhere. In my experience, what an agent is looking for is somebody who's already kind of semi-established and has some form of understanding of the world they're trying to get into in a bigger way. So it might be that you've got a string of local, less, prominent clients who you've worked for for a year or two, or you build up a rapport, you understand that relationship, how to milk it, how to feather it. It might be you understand the process of licensing images and getting the best deal out of any kind of thing you shoot. It might be you understand how the industry is led by ideas and not necessarily people bringing them to you like it used to be in the old days. It used to be that if you're doing editorial work, stuff like that, you used to be able to, some person would phone you up and say, I need XYZ, go shoot it, bring it. That doesn't quite happen anymore. It's now about what can you bring, what can you do, what ideas have you got. So straight away, the understanding of what an agent is looking for is not necessarily just a good photographer or a unique photographer. Somebody who they think they can sell in a niche. That might happen occasionally. If somebody's work's that outstanding and that different and that good, they might think that. But generally speaking, agents want to buy into somebody who's not, I guess, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but they want somebody who understands what they're getting into and appreciates the work, because it's not as simple as going, hello, Mrs. Agent, do you like my work? Yes. Oh, great. I'll sit here and wait for the phone to ring then. And then you sit there and the agent rings you with £1 million gig every 5 months. It just doesn't work like that. That's not how it is. Just like I said before, it's not like that with bands these days. You get a band, you get a manager, they kind of build you up gradually over time. So it's, we're not looking at, if you think you're going to get an agent that's going to suddenly propel you to the stratosphere, it's not. Extreme cases, it might happen, yes. And extreme cases, you can do that without an agent. But 9 out of 10, it's a slow burn, gradual build, reputation thing. Then you think, an agent doesn't do it for free. They want commission. They'll perhaps want some control. They'll definitely want you to wipe out 90% of your portfolio, because as photographers, we are the worst curators of our own portfolios. We are completely inept at creating our own work. I'm as guilty as that as anybody. I can look at your work, I can look at students' work, and I can help you fine-tune that down to the nth degree. But my own work, I'm just going to show you everything. So you need another set of eyes to go, no, not that. And it's like as photographers, we take offence, don't we? Oh, it's one of my babies. Well, your baby's ugly. You know what I mean? So that happens as well. Agents will expect you to cull down to what they think is the work, that the show of the work that's going to get you work. And then they have other people on their books who won't always be you that gets the gig, probably. They have their commission, so you're working, I don't know what the going rate is now, 20-25%. Do you want to give 20-25% of that work away, that you've earned, that money away, so that you've earned, to somebody who's, could you potentially do it without them? So, it's not, if you're thinking I need an agent to become big, fine, but understand that concept. How does that big happen? And if it's a case of, but they can get me in places I can't get, yes, they can. But with a lot of strategic work on your part and you almost becoming your own agent, really, is probably a better way for most people to do it. And I've kind of realized over the years it's better for me to do that way, just because of who I am, my personality, what my thoughts are, how I don't get into that pleasing other people kind of way of working. I do things for me. And I know it means I miss out on some jobs, but I don't care, because I wouldn't enjoy doing them jobs, because I'm compromising who I am, how I feel about things. So this is going to be a longer answer than I think Toby might have wanted, but yes, you can become highly successful without an agent. Absolutely you can. But you have to understand the level of work to hit the same kind of level of success as to what an agent might offer. But the agent can only offer it if you are ready. And I think a lot of photographers, and like I said, I made the mistake of thinking I was ready because my work was at a certain standard. You're not always ready for what's expected. So, I mean, you think about it. Yes, an agent can take from you. They can do everything. They can do all the production side of the shoot, and you turn up and shoot what the client wants with help and suggestion from your agent. It's taking a lot of pressure off you. But you can do all that yourself. We'll talk about that more in a minute. It's more, I think, people, and I'm certainly guilty of this as well, thought I needed an agent because the agent had all the contacts and the agent could slither me into places I could never get near. When there's some truth in that, but the agent will buy into you, and the expectation from you is you'll work with the agent. And if you think you can just say to the agent, get me in Vogue, get me in GQ, get me whatever, it's not going to work like that. It's going to be a different dynamic, and it'll possibly be a slow burn with some lesser things first and some intermediate things as you build up towards that level of kudos, I guess. And so the agent, while good agent, I mean, there are bad agents out there as well, but the best agents will nurture you, but they won't expect you to be a baby. They won't expect to have to tell you everything, but they will nurture what you know to help you build that. They will fine tune, flatten, dispose of most of your portfolio, and they will get you places over time. Or you could forget that and become a proper working photographer. So what does a proper working photographer look like? Well, photographer is the photographer bit of it is the least voluminous bit that you'll do. So I don't want to put figures on it. I don't want to say you'll be 70% photographer, 30%. It's not like that. You have to become a different entity. So most photographers are just photographers. They have ideas, they put teams together, they make pictures, or they go and sit on the hills for hours, or whatever it is you're doing, whatever genre you're in. It's not as simple as making a portfolio and the work will appear. So if you think as a photographer that you can just have 10,000 followers on Instagram, whatever it is, that volume is nothing. The likes that you get on your pictures on Instagram, all the other social media platforms, mean nothing. What makes people book you is real world relationships. And if you're a photographer that enjoys portraits and fashion like I do, regardless of how good your portfolio is yet or now, what you've got to do is figure out how to get people on your doorstep wherever you live to book you in the first instance and then repeat book you moving forward. And that in itself is not easy. An example, you do a photo shoot for a local company. You negotiate a good fee with them. You go and do the shoot. They like the pictures. They're happy. You then sit there. Nothing happens. You've been paid for the shoot. Nothing happens. What should you be doing as a photographer? As a photographer, you just want to take pictures, but as a photographer stroke business person, you've got to have the presence to go, right, I did the shoot for XYZ last week. I gave him a couple of weeks and I'm going to drop a mail. Still happy with the pictures? Did you need any further adjustments? Are you happy with the package? Did you need anything for bigger print? Have you got any new ideas that you want to talk about? The strength of building that relationship is in your follow-up, you can't expect to sit there and the company to just come back to you. You've got to be proactive and keep in their head, for want of a better phrase. And if you do that, sometimes you will make them think they need pictures they don't need. And that's what businessmen do. It's not what photographers do. Photographers take brilliant pictures, have great concepts for pictures. They don't necessarily understand the business of being a financially secure photographer. So you've got to somehow convince that company to stay working with you. And it's not enough just to go, they love them pictures in January. And then in February the next year going, oh, they never came back to me. Because it's highly likely they've forgotten about you because somebody else has come in and kept them warm in that interim. So building relationships with people is key to your success. And let's say you want to be a photographer, a portrait photographer, maybe a portrait and a bit of corporate photography within that, because they're both good earners. Look at your local landscape, look at your local businesses, see what out there. And it doesn't sound glamorous, does it? It doesn't sound like Vogue magazine. It doesn't sound like GQ. But what it is it's regular income. And do you want to have to do a photo shoot once a month and then work, I don't know, in Maccies or Morrison's for the rest of the month? Or do you want to become good at networking, at speaking to people, at convincing people to buy into you and shoot pretty mundane portraits, corporate portraits, boardroom stuff in poor lighting, and make it work and get paid for it? What do you want to do? Because most serious photographers, the cream of the crop photographers that you see, the names in vogue and that all the time, are just extremely rare. Most working photographers do the grunt work because they want to be photographers. And you've almost kind of got to become immune to the fact that you're only working in where I am in Rotherham and Sheffield, photographing stuff for businesses. And it's not Milan, because it doesn't matter. You're a working photographer, respected, who is building relationships, who is savvy enough to be continually in touch with people to kind of keep you in their line of sight. So they're constantly thinking about wanting new photographs and updates and changes. And you're their go-to person because you're in their line of sight. If you've done a great shoot for them and then rest on your laurels a little bit because you're over here or you're doing this, as a businessman, you've failed. As a photographer, you've failed. So the biggest kind of mind shift from artist to business owner is the thing where most photographers fall down. Because it is seriously, seriously hard, mind-numbing, tedious, long work. It really is. But if you want to be that person who's getting those bookings, who's working 2 or 3 or 4 days a week for £500,000, £2,000 shoot, you've got to put in that legwork. You've got to always be at it. And it's not like I said before, it's not like, oh, you're 90% marketer, 5% photographer, 5% accountant, or whatever it is. It's a way of life. It's a bit like, I equate it to 20 years ago plus, I used to be a publican. I had a couple of pubs. And sometimes people think a publican's just a barman. Oh, just pull pints. It's a way of life. It's a literal way of life. You have got to get up at 7, prep for the day, sort your staff, all that. It's a way of life. And I got into a rhythm, up at 7 and go to bed well after midnight. But I chose that because I loved it at that time. I was a bit younger, a bit more energetic. It's a way of life. And photography, becoming a successful photographer, is exactly the same thing. You have got to become, it's got to become your way of life. And part of that way of life is you networking, doing the grunt work, going to the boring meetings, negotiating with people, kissing arse, if you like. But what do you want to do? Do you really want to be successful? Or do you just want to live in that pipe dream where you're in vogue, you're Mario Testino or whoever it is? Because you might think your work's a lot on par with them, and it probably is. There's a lot of good photographers out there making no money. But the Mario Testinos of this world are one in hundreds of thousands. And you're within the hundreds of thousands. So while you're while you're trying to make that opportunity, what are you doing? Are you actually down doing the grunt work? Are you actually looking at local businesses, firing prospective emails out, knocking on doors, making phone calls? Going to networking events? Are you part of the local Chamber of Commerce? What are you doing locally? Because if you're not a master of your own backyard, how do you expect to get to Milan, to New York, to all those other places to do the work, to get the big bucks? And I think there's a bit more of a fallacy as well, as people think that shooting for local companies and on a local scene, the money's not good. Well, trust me, the money is out there for it. You can charge certainly in the thousands for corporate packages for companies who need updates for their, even just for their website, for their brochures, for their whatever it is. You can earn good money then on retainers. If you understand how licensing works, if they want to, if you've shot something for a local company, they love the pictures, they decide they're going to do a national campaign. Have you negotiated the right for them to use those pictures for that? Is that a part of your licensing dealing with that? When you consider all that stuff, you could be earning some good money. And I've spoken, and I've read a few blogs by some really prominent photographers just recently. Been doing quite a lot of research on this very topic. A little bit because it interests me, and I always like to be informed of what's happening and what's expected, what the trends are, where things are working. But a little bit of me is starting to want to get at and do a little bit more photography. So I'm just looking where the work is. And if you're savvy, if you're really switched on, if you're really working hard, if your persona becomes a photographic business persona where you are living the life, you're in, all you do is from the minute you wake up, consider what you're doing today to build more business. If that's your frame of mind, if that's the person you've become, then certainly earning 35 to 40, maybe even £50,000 a year just from your local economy is entirely doable if you pitch it right and you work hard enough in the right places. And I was surprised that the small handful of people who are doing that I've spoken to and read about are doing that, because it excited me actually, because if you're online, social media, that everything's just AI, and it's just an AI minefield, and you feel like photography's been destroyed. But actually, on the ground, in the real world, not in the cyber world, not in the dreamland world, not in the I wish I were up here world, in the real world, outside your front door, people still want and need photographs, and they're still willing to pay good money for those photographs. Because they can't do it themselves. They don't know how to use AI. If they did use AI, it wouldn't give them what they wanted. They need a good, solid, reliable photographer who delivers what they said they were going to do for the budget they said they were going to do it, to the quality they said they were going to do it, and more importantly, in the time frame they said they were going to do it. And if you can become that all-encompassing business photographer, whilst you're keeping your eye out for those opportunities and still pushing and hoping for those bigger pipe dream opportunities, you will earn enough money that you don't have to go and work at Maccies or do that arduous day job that you hate to pay for your craft, because you have stopped being a hobbyist and become a serious photographer. And the only real difference between an art photographer and a serious photographer is that approach. How do I get my work? How do I get people to pay me to create work? Doesn't matter how good your portfolio is. If you think even if you're paying for Google ads and you think people are seeing your work, they're not. And if they are, you're 30th down the list. Get out, knock on doors, make phone calls, send emails. Once you've done that and you've impressed them, keep in touch, keep warm. Not to an annoyance fact, but periodically. How's it going, team? Still love those images we did. They were great. Have you any other plans on the horizon? Have you seen what this company's doing? Build relationships, build dialogue. Ensure that you are always kind of ready and not caught on the hop. If the company comes back to you, what's your plan like? What's your availability like? And it's a very difficult, time-consuming, hard thing to do all that. People don't think that photography is a difficult thing to do. I've had student photographers come on a photography course because they think it's going to be something easy for a couple of years, and then they realise after a few weeks, oh shit, this is actually hard work. This is serious hard work. Photography is. Just being a photographer, creating the pictures, just going and doing the couple of hours gig, just doing the half-day portrait work, that is mentally consuming, physically consuming, particularly if you're older like me and your joints are going, you go bad back and all that. It can be absolutely debilitatingly tiring. And then you're going to spend all the rest of your time at home being a great editor, being a great archivist, being a great publisher, a great marketer, and all the other stuff that comes from business. You're going to be self-employed, you're going to do your tax, you're going to do all that stuff. But you work at it, you work hard at it, you spend time doing it, and over a few months, maybe half a year, it's become second nature to you, and you are now this entity that's not just a photographer, you're also a business person, and you're good to go, and you've got work coming in, and you've got relationships built. That's how you start to become that photographer you want to be. And you didn't need an agent. You just needed the savvy to know what to do locally as your start. And it might be that you've done some of this and you've got some, which is great, but have you done enough? Have you applied it enough. And I can be honest and say to you, on my doorstep, I haven't, because I haven't needed to. And if I'm going to consider myself now getting back into doing more photography, I need to up my game in those areas, and I know that instantly. And I need to make new acquaintances. I need to start to go to places. And I will do that. But that's the starting point. That's the foundation for you to push on to head towards that place where you want to be. And it's not a quick journey, not a quick fix. There'll be lots of headaches, lots of tears, lots of frustration. You'll want to quit every other day. But just keep telling yourself, as a photographer, if I want to get there, I've first got to go here. And don't be afraid to do that. Quite, I don't know what the phrase is, mediocre gig on your doorstep, because that's the stepping stone. And I'll equate it back to music again, as being a musician. You've got to start somewhere as a musician. You can be the best garage band in the world, but if nobody hears you, what's the point? So you do your couple of free gigs locally, and then you might go a bit further and get 50 quid, 100 quid, couple hundred quid. You might put a CD out, or now you might stream something out. Suddenly somebody hears you, but you've got a bit of a foundation, more than you would have had if you'd have just done the garage thing and then expected somebody to pick you off the shelf. Grow as a provider photography services, and including that, your own savvy, your own understanding, your own hard work, and people will buy into that, trust me. So while you're thinking about how you're going to get your kind of local scene wrapped up, and it might be that you kind of like further end game is to get an agent, but that agent will buy into you better if you can already do and understand all this stuff. But forget about the agent. You're your own agent. Your end game is to be published in esteemed magazines. Great. While you're waiting for that to happen, you're looking at, I'll use myself as an example. My favourite thing to photograph is people. And because I like the interaction, I like the dynamic, I like trying to capture the personality, that's what does it for me. Portrait, beauty, hair and fashion are the things I enjoy most there, because they're the most technically challenged, both from a lighting, an edit, composition, a communication kind of standpoint. So when I get that right, that's the biggest buzz I get. But outside of that, you've got things like local dance schools that might need portraits of all their kids. You've got local societies that just want a bunch of pictures for their group. You've got local chamber of commerce that need every year updating website and corporate stuff because people come and go. You've got local businesses that you can contact and get to through the chamber who need photographs for all sorts of things. And the local chamber has such a wide variety of companies on there. If you're savvy, you could possibly make a living just photographing for them. Now, bear in mind, you've got local competition. There are other photographers out there. But in my experience, very few of them pay or will pay for stuff they get access to. So it's not free to join the Chamber of Commerce in your local area. It might be 300 quid a year or whatever it is. But the access that you get to people is well worth it. So start there. And, you'll probably drive or walk up and down the high street or past companies on the day, just pop in with a business card. But you've got to start thinking outside of the stuff you love. You've got to do the bread and butter stuff as well, which often is corporate. And within corporate, you can do corporate branding stuff as well. So as well as shooting headshots for companies, you can do their new thing, whatever advert or thing they need at the time. That's the kind of work you need to start thinking of as you're aiming for the top. And within that, what other skill sets have you got as a photographer? Now, the only thing I don't really do, and I say don't really do it, not done much of it because it bores the absolute life out of me, and that's product photography. I've done it a few times. I'm not great at it because I don't enjoy it. And photographing inanimate objects just doesn't do it for me. There are some great product photographers out there, and if you're one of them, great. Use that kind of. If you're into it and you can do it to the point where you'll enjoy it enough to make money, go and do that, because there are companies out there with all sorts of stuff they need photographing. So think about that. Then you've got things like, and I know it's a bit of a moot point, but stock imagery still works in the right situations, in the right places. But you've got to consider volume over beauty. And what I mean by that is, I my own personal portfolio of landscapes, skyscapes, cities, things like that, I know won't sell massively on stock sites because the way I like to shoot stuff is not really what people are looking for. Does that make sense? And I've sold a few pictures over time. But if you wanted to use it as an income, you've got to kind of find a style within your style which will make people buy the picture. So my pictures is tremendously dark, deep, contrasty. And quite often, even on Alamy, some of my pictures have failed their quality inspection check because of that. Not because they're a shit picture, but because for what they're trying to do and sell, my style just doesn't meet their quality expectations. And that's a strange thing to understand. But when I'm using noise and shadow to tell stories, their algorithm or whatever human they use at that point doesn't like it. So some of my stuff gets rejected from there, which is fine because I understand that. But if you want to shoot stock stuff, and that can be everything from street photography to products to landscape, sky, whatever it is you've got, think about that, but think about volume. And then once you've got a lot, I'm talking thousands of pictures here, not 10 pictures, you've got to really build a stock of thousands of pictures because you'll not get paid massively for each one. But if you've got a stock of lots of pictures and you're getting a few quid now and again for them all, there's some money in there. I was reading a great piece of advice this morning, actually, from a fantastic photographer, Marco Secchi, and how it is approach to stock photography. And it's quite obvious when you think about it. If you've got 100 pictures on stock and 30 are selling and 70 aren't, don't keep making pictures like the other 70. It's obvious, isn't it, when you think about it? If you've got 10 pictures on there and one sells well, don't make pictures like the other 9. Make more pictures like the other one. And come at it from that kind of perspective, I guess. You're not making pictures that you like to hang on your wall at home or in your studio. You're making pictures that people want to use to pay you for. So you kind of got to get into that mindset. And I can get into that mindset. And if I decide to go back down that track, I might do. And I'll still approach it in my own way with my own style. But I'll be shooting one eye and thinking, right, what kind of company would use this picture and why? How would they want it to be? And make it like that to make money, because it's part of your income stream, isn't it? It is really part of your income stream, other than just making pictures and being paid on the day for the one thing you've made. You're looking at long-time licensing, long-time resale on these things. If you're then thinking, right, well, I'm on my way to Vogue magazine, I'm going to be doing that, and I'm also going to be thinking about perhaps selling prints. But the only thing with selling prints is it's time consuming, it's expensive, and they're difficult to sell unless you've got a niche and a place you're selling them for. So I'm not saying you can't make money from selling prints, but it's not what it used to be. 25, 30 years ago, it was a prints were like a, I can remember photographers that I was looking at when I was first getting into it were selling prints hand over fist, to the point where they'd even got big, like, the big printers in the studios to make prints. I don't know, they were retailing them out at like, it would cost something like £1 an inch to print it, and they were selling them for 300, 400, 500, 600 quid. So it's a little different world now to what it was then, but there's still some opportunity there. For me, an easy thing is teaching and mentoring, because I've done it for 20 years. And it's not something that I want to do privately as much now as I've done over the years. But if you're confident with how to use a camera, how to make good pictures, and how to get people into it, then you could potentially make money mentoring. The thing about mentoring is you've got to kind of let people buy into what you do and who you are and what you make. So convincing wannabe photographers that you're the guy is the trickiest thing. But again, maybe you can find a niche within that. Your style of portraits, your style of landscapes, your style of approach, maybe that's what you sell. And make workshops. And like driving instructors or whatever it is now, you can charge anything from 35 to 50 quid an hour for doing that. It's another income stream, isn't it? I'm not going to say get into that NFT thing, because I never bought into it. I never liked it. I always thought it was a bit of a lot of bullshit, if I'm honest. But I do know some photographers that have done it and made a few quid on it. But NFTs for me, it was dead as soon as it started. It was just a gimmick for me, and I've no time for that. So I'm not going to say, even though I've got it down as a bullet point to discuss, I'm not really going to say utilise that. If any of you out there have actually done the NFT thing and had success, drop some comments below and let us know. Tell us what your successful was. But for me, it was just another bullshit way of diminishing the worth of art, if you like. Short-term brag, long-term bullshit. So, you can. It's not just a case of making pictures. There are other things as a photographer and as a mentor, as a business person, you can do. And you might have other skills as well, which you can bring into photography. So, for example, if you can do design, if you can do some design as well as photography, it's another bit of your arsenal, isn't it? And it's not strictly photography, but if you know the company that you're working for and their branding would have to pay a designer or whatever it is, well, if you can offer that as part of your service, then you can certainly expand out. And a lot of photographers do come from creative art backgrounds and design backgrounds, so don't be afraid to kind of like mingle them up and kind of use all the strengths you've got as a creative, not just as a photographer. And probably the most difficult thing you'll come up against is the most difficult thing I think all photographers come up against, and that's how much to charge, what kind of packages you're going to put together. But my advice at this point is don't do cheap. As difficult as it is, and you want to make money, you've got to pay the rent, I know all that. Don't do cheap. Do some market research. Try and see what other people are charging. Maybe even speak to companies and see what they're paying. Pitch yourself for your worth, and I've said this in a million of my podcasts over the years. Know your worth and pitch at that worth, and consider the longer term things. So you're not just doing a shoot for this week and for now. What about the licensing options further down? Make sure that's all built into your T's and C's. And don't forget, you're not a photographer charging 50 quid for a portrait. You're a photographer charging a few hundred quid for a portrait with then, do they want prints? That's a bit more. Do they want heavy retouch? That's a bit more. You've got to upsell everything because you're not a photographer. You're a business person, businessman, businesswoman. And you've got to learn to upsell your stuff. So it's no good saying, I'll do your shoot, I'll shoot you 200 pictures for your portraits, you can have them all. Well, are they going to use 200 portraits? Are they going to post 200 portraits on social media? Are they going to print a different portrait themselves every week? It's the wrong approach. Do a handful of portraits in your price, I don't know, 200, 250 quid. You get a handful of portraits. Digital at a resolution which is optimized for spotlight or whatever it is. Can I have high resolution photos? What do you need high res for? Well, I'm going to do some prints. No, you don't do your prints. I supply prints. How much are your prints? My prints are X, Y, Z. You're a business person and a business mindset. Don't give out raw files. Don't give out high res unless there's a specific reason for it and they're paid for it. What can I use the pictures for? Well, you can use them on your website. You can use them to promote your business. Oh, well, I'm thinking about putting an advert out and having it run around in a van around Yorkshire. Great. There's a licensing fee for that. And if you don't know how much to charge for that, do some research. There'll be other photographers, other people locally who've done that. Find it out and build it into your upsell process, because let's just say, for example, you find a local client, you do their portraits, you charge them 250 quid. You never hear from them again, but you see that picture for the next 10 years running around town. It happens. How have you missold yourself there? What benefit have you got from that? Company who's got their pictures for 250 quid have got a great benefit from it, but what did you get from it? What was your end game out of that? So you've got to become a business person. You've got to be switched on. You're not just that happy photographer who wants to get his pictures out and be paid for it. You're a businessman now. You're a businesswoman now. It's difficult. I've said this a million times in this podcast. It's difficult. It's hard. It's time consuming. It's hard work. It's fucking hard work. I know, because I did it for a long time. And I'm considering going back to it in a slightly smaller form. I am considering going back to some more of it. But I'll cherry pick so I can be happy. Communication is key, isn't it? You've got to kind of like, before you go out and knock on doors, you've got to have a package. You've got to have your thing ready to go. You've got to be confident to talk about it. You've got to be confident to negotiate. You've got to understand 100% what you're going to offer, why, how, and when. And people buy into confidence. They don't buy into cheap. They don't buy into unprepared. They don't buy into, I'll get back to you. They buy into confidence. Tell me now. Upfront, what is it? That's what they need. So you need to know all that before you go knocking on doors or sending out emails. And if you're not sure about that, don't do anything until you are. The biggest piece of prep work will be the bit that gets you the gig rather than your great photos. If you do great photos and you've not really negotiated rates and then you do the shoot and it's all a bit wishy-washy, they don't quite get as many as they thought, or they get more than they thought, it just becomes a big piece of shit. You end up miserable. It doesn't progress your career any further. You won't get any comeback from them. You won't get upsells. You won't get any more repeat business. You need to be prepared before you knock on doors. Be ultimately prepared and have all the answers they're going to ask of you. And a thing that gets overlooked in a lot of this is insurance for photographers. Quite often, photographers who have been hobbyists and hired other people's studios and never really thought about their liabilities. Trust me, get some insurance. You can get insurance not just for your kit, but for public and employer liabilities for less than 40 quid a month. That'll cover you for millions. Get out there and find some photographer's insurance, please, because if you're going to be serious about this, something goes wrong, hard drive fail, camera fail, somebody trips over one of your cables, you knock into somebody, you hurt them, you're not insured, everything's dead. So for the price of insurance, please put that at the forefront in your mind. If you want some advice on that, give me a shout, drop me an email or a message. I can advise you where I get mine from. If you haven't got your own studio and you know you're going to need a studio somewhere now and again, find one locally and negotiate with them. Look, I'm going to bring some repeat business in here. Can we have a bit of a deal? At the end of the day, if you're doing personal portraits one-to-one, you can quite often just use your house. If you've got some savvy, you got a bit of space, couple of lights, clean backdrops, you can kind of get away with that. More corporate stuff, you're probably going to need space. So look at those opportunities, and again, have the answers for that. Corporate stuff's quite handy because often you can go to their premises and do it, particularly things like the chamber. And bigger businesses tend to have somewhere they want to photograph because they often want to incorporate that into what they're doing. Once you've got all this kind of info, once you've kind of built your once you've built your case, once you've got your persona, you've got your portfolio culled. I know it's hard to do it, but get somebody to help you cull it. You got yourself, you got your skills, you got your portfolio, you've got all the information that client or clients are going to ask you. You know it all. You're now ready to start knocking on doors. You need to go with I want to be your friend. I want this to be a long-term relationship attitude, not a, will you pay me for some portraits? Thanks, mate, I'm off. And if you go with that, confidence, pricing that's right, not extortionate, it's worth what you're worth. You understand the licensing, you understand the legalities and all that stuff. You go with that bundle of who you are. Confident, looking to start relationships, that's key. You'll do well, and people will buy into you. My kind of quick tips for success there are: honesty is always the best policy. Be upfront. Don't bullshit people. Don't ever promise things you can't deliver. Don't ever say you can do something you can't. Be brutally honest with people. The most pleasing thing a client likes is quick turnaround on stuff. So if you've done a shoot on a Monday and you say, I'll have the edits, it'll all be done and dusted by Wednesday, deliver on Wednesday, not Thursday morning, Wednesday. That's the kind of stuff people buy into. As long as your personality, they buy into the people who are dependent, people who they can trust, people who when they say your pictures will be in the Dropbox or wherever you're putting them by this time on Wednesday, and they are. You've nailed it. Be creatively sound. Don't budge on your own creative skills. Don't try and make something that they want because they've already bought into you because of what you've sold them. Sometimes what happens is clients will say, can you do X, Y, Z? And that's not what you do. It's not what you've agreed to. Stick to your creative agreement. This is what you bought me for. This is what you've hired me for to do. This is what my style is. This is what I make. This is what you're going to get. But be pleasant about it. You don't have to be an arse about it. Just, this is what you've asked for. This is what you're going to get. Because some clients after the event will have a brain fart and think that they want something else. They want to renegotiate and reshoot. They can, but at that point, this is what you've agreed to. And be contactable. Always be contactable. And what I mean by that is, don't check your inbox on a Monday and then reply to somebody on a Friday. If you've had an inquiry on the Monday, you get back to them as soon as you can. Or if you know you're going to be out all day doing a shoot and you're busy, you could just send a quick message. Hi Jim, saw your message. I'm out on a shoot all day. When I get back this evening, I'll have a look at it while I'm eating my tea and I'll get back to you ASAP. Then they know that you're aware. If you ignore it by Wednesday or till Friday, they might have gone, well, we went to see Pete because he was available. So they're the 4 kind of micro things within that. It's highly important in building relationships. People having faith in you, trusting you, and you being confident, and that's what people are really buying into. They won't buy into people who shift the goalpost. They won't buy into people who turn up late. They won't buy into people who bullshit. They just won't. Truth, honesty, reliability, and create what you said you would do, and you'll be fine. You will get lots of repeat business. And that is really, to answer Toby's initial question, what you need to do to make it, whatever that really means, as a photographer without an agent. And then once you've got that level of local, slightly further than local, like I'm in Rotherham, nail a bit of Sheffield, nail Yorkshire, you're then starting to attract attention, word of mouth. Even today, even in this digital age, word of mouth, people talking about you is the best thing you can hope for. So get people talking about you. Get people to give you feedback on whether it's on your website, whether it's on your Google business page. Get genuine people to write on their feedback, and that will honestly propel you. Discovered through research this last year or so that if you want to get listed high up on Google, you need to get people recommending you in the comments section, in the feedback section. So make sure you're doing that. And as you're doing that, you're building a reputation, you're building a wider portfolio, you're being paid for doing it. You're not having to work at Maccies or whatever day job it is you've got. You've started to maybe earn 400, 500, 600,000 quid a week, take off tax. Before you know it, you're edging towards 40 and 50 grand a year. And you're still on the push to get those big things that you wanted. And you'll be able to afford equipment, you'll be able to afford to go places. You'll be able to maybe sneak into places you wouldn't have been able to afford to before, or you couldn't do before because you were working in the day job. So it's key. The key out of all this is to change your mindset from just being a photographer to being a business person. And it sounds counterintuitive because you just want to be a photographer. I know that. But you're highly unlikely to get an agent unless you have this approach anyway. And people that do get these agents are kind of, life sometimes puts you in the right place, right time, right opportunity. But that is one in every 100,000, maybe even less or more. So the only real way you can make it as a photographer to any degree is by developing a business mindset and working your absolute fucking arse off for years. And if you've been doing that already, do more of it. Do it better. Take a step back, have a fresh look. Ask somebody to come in and have a look, see what they might do. Even if it's somebody who's not from photography, because sometimes fresh eyes is all you need. But certainly, I'm a photographer and a business person is the mentality to have. And I'm not saying don't negotiate, but I'm saying don't do things for free and cheap. Well, there's a cost here. I'm a professional. You won't go down to the butcher's and say, how much is that meat? Then you go 20 quid. You won't say, well, can you do it for 5? Because the butcher would tell you. Yeah? You need to have that same approach, only a friendly response as a photographer. Otherwise, you're working for peanuts, and you might as well be working at Maccies for 12 quid an hour or whatever it is. So that's my thoughts on can you be successful as a photographer without an agent? Absolutely, yes, you can. Agents aren't everything that you think they are. They can be brilliant. They're only suitable for certain things, certain types of photographers, certain personalities. An example would be I would be completely uncomfortable working for anybody that is extremely left-leaning. I wouldn't be able to keep my mouth shut probably. So I wouldn't go looking for work there. And my experience recently, quite a lot of the higher end work is there. And if you can suck it up and you don't mind that, go do it. Fine, great. But it's not something I'm looking to do. So I won't do that. But outside of that, I working with people. So if you're doing model actor portraits, local football team, local chamber, local businesses, you're working with people, aren't you? You know, I did a shoot earlier in the year for the local chamber of commerce here, and photographed about 15 or 16 of them, I think it was. Took my kit, I didn't do it in my studio. For their convenience, I went to their place of work so they could work and just nip out for the pictures. So I set up in this little room, and everyone that came in was like, "Oh, I hate having my picture took," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do. That's why I'm buying the camera." But what that does gives me a unique eye because I know that's how you feel, and that instant relaxes them. And I took 3 pictures of each of them. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. That was great. And they used all the pictures because I instantly relaxed them by telling them that I understood 100% how they felt because that was me, and it's the truth. It was a genuine comment. I hate having my picture took. But I'm confident behind the camera and I understand that they feel like that, so I know how to get the best out of them. And those little things kind of like go massively. They're a massive boon for you as a photographer building a business, trying to get to the next kind of stage, position, and all of the, you know, even what you might think are the most successful photographers that do all the high-end stuff, that most of them, if not all of them, came through this pathway, I'm telling you. It's extremely rare for somebody to just rock up with a camera, a handful of pictures, and become a superstar. If you look at everybody from Bailey to Beaton, they all work. They all do the work, did the work. And I think you can be the best creative art photographer in history, but if nobody knows you exist, what's the point? So that's it. Yes, you can certainly be a successful photographer, a highly successful photographer. You can make it without an agent, 100% yes. But be prepared for that years of hard graft. But what's worse, you're a photographer, you're a working, earning photographer, or you're an art photographer doing great work, but has to do a 9 to 5 as well. Who wants that? Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. See you on the next one. Have a great week. Apparently it's going to be boiling all week, so whatever you're up to, enjoy. Catch you on the next one. Cheers. Thanks for tuning into the Lance Burkitt Encounter today. I really do appreciate you spending some time with me here in the world of photography, education and reality. If you enjoyed the episode and feel like you learned a bit of something, do me a favour. Like, subscribe and share the channel with somebody you feel really needs to hear it. And if you're able to, and if you'd like to, please head over to lanceburkitt.com/shop and treat yourself to some of the Lance Burkitt Encounter merchandise. After all, that's how we're going to keep the channel and the podcast alive and completely independent. Until next time, keep shooting with purpose and stay true to yourselves. Cheers.
You won't believe, yeah, I can't get you out my